What's up, everyone? My name's Taylor Nemechek, and this is Who's That Saint? Over the past few weeks, we've kind of been on a roll with saints starting with the letters G and E. 2 weeks ago, we had Saint Germaine Cousin, and last week we had Saint Genesius of Rome. And that's not going to stop, because this week we're going to be looking at the life of Saint Genevieve. So the question is, who is Saint Genevieve? Genevieve was born around the year 422 in Nanterre, France, to the parents of Severus and Gerontia, and she was known to be very fair and courageous while growing up. And at the age of 7, the Bishop of Auxerre, France, Saint Germanus, visited her hometown on his way to visit Britain. And while he was here, he wanted to visit with the people and meet the people, so he was out in one of the large town courtyards, or town squares, and he was just visiting with the people. So a large crowd had gathered around Germanus at this time, and Genevieve happened to be within this crowd and just listening and wanting to get to see the bishop. And the bishop, and kind of noticing her presence, singled her out and foretold Genevieve's sanctity right there in the presence of all the people. And so after this, at Genevieve's request, the bishop took her along with most of who had gathered there and consecrated Genevieve to God as a virgin. The next day, she once again found herself in the presence of the bishop, and he asked her if she remembered the promise she had made the day before, and she responded that she did, and that she would do this faithfully. And the bishop, after her saying this, gave her a brass medal with a cross engraved on it to always wear around her neck, and this was to be a reminder of the promise she had made to God. And he also told Genevieve to never wear any other jewelry to avoid falling into vanity. After this powerful interaction with the holy bishop, she dedicated her life to prayer, acts of penance, and practices of devotion. And when she was the age of 15, she met with another bishop, this time the Bishop of Paris, and requested to become a nun. And from this point on, she started unceasingly praying and constantly fasting, and she would allow herself to only eat twice a week. After her parents passed away, Genevieve went to live with her grandmother in Paris. And while she was here, she would travel sharing her faith, praying for the sick, and prophesying and performing different acts of charity for the poor and just those around her. And her life was filled with signs that the Holy Spirit was working through her. There were several miracles and spiritually inspired predictions that were performed through Genevieve. And often she would see these visions of angels and the saints. And these experiences weren't necessarily things that were common for the ordinary person. So when they would hear of these experiences Genevieve was having, it began to turn the people against her because they thought she was lying and trying to be some kind of false visionary. And the people were so weirded out and freaked out by these experiences Genevieve was having that they went as far as even wanting to drown her in a lake that was on fire. But Saint Germanus, the bishop from her earlier childhood, once again came to her aid and intervened and silenced all of these accusations. And after this, the bishop assigned her a position to look after all the consecrated virgins, which she did faithfully. Genevieve also played a big role for the greater Paris. For example, she had a large influence on Childeric, the king of Gaul, who had overtaken Paris. Childeric was a pagan king, but he respected her and freed several prisoners on her behalf. On another occasion, while Paris was going through a large famine, she took a boat to Troyes and brought back several boatloads full of corn. And she was also an influence for the king of Clovis. He would listen to her advice and also freed several prisoners on her behalf as well. And one more example, when Attila and the Huns was advancing on Paris, the Christians were ready to run and they were terrified. But Genevieve told them to stay in their homes, praying and fasting, and she told them they would be protected by heaven. And her prediction came true, as Attila, for some reason, changed the route and turned away from Paris. Saint Genevieve died at the age of 89 on January 3rd in the year of 512. After her death, a church was built over her tomb, and you can still see it today, but the tomb is empty. Saint Aloysius encased her relics in a handmade shrine around the year of 630. The church built over Genevieve's tomb has been destroyed several times over the years. When it was rebuilt around the year of 856, Genevieve's relics were returned, and shortly after, miracles began to be attributed to her, making the church famous throughout France. And Paris has also experienced many occasions to prove Genevieve's intercession. For example, there was the burning fever in the year of 1129. There was a violent fever that swept throughout the entire city, and doctors could not do a thing to stop the fatalities of the fever. But the shrine of Genevieve's relics was carried in procession to the cathedral, and during the ceremony, whoever touched the shrine was healed. And after this, no one else became sick, and all that were already sick recovered. So with all these occurrences, Saint Genevieve is naturally the patron saint of France, and her feast day is January 3rd. So there's our answer to who is Saint Genevieve. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something you didn't already know about this great saint. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, and leave a comment of any saints you'd like to see in future episodes, or any topics you'd like to see me talk about on Wednesdays. And make sure to go check out any of the other videos you haven't seen, and as always, make sure to stay tuned for next week's episode of Who's That Saint? See you next time. God bless.